Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with Lee Benson, who's one of the world's most influential thinkers on helping organizations align employees to strategy and culture to achieve extraordinary results. He's a highly regarded keynote speaker, and he has powerful yet practical approach to leadership and culture that he created through his own personal business success. We're going to talk to him about some of his work. He's been featured on CNBC. He's written numerous articles, and it's very interesting because he's a keynote speaker who's been with prominent business leaders like Jack Welch, Blake Irving. So I want to find out more about that. It's nice to have you here, Lee.
It's great to be here with you, Diane. Thank you.
Now, you're here in Arizona, right?
I am. Yeah, our offices are downtown Chandler. I live in Phoenix.
Ah, I see. I got a few people on my show from Arizona. Sharon Lechter, Tom Hopkins. We've got quite a few celebrities here in town, so it's kind of fun.
That's great. I know Sharon well, actually.
Oh, she was great and very interesting. Her series of books is just amazing what she's accomplished. But I'm curious how you got into what you've got. You're very focused on strategy and culture and all that, and that's such a huge topic right now. Have you always focused on that? I mean, how'd you get into this?
Well, my journey started when I bought a business that basically lost all of its customers overnight, and I was one of the employees working there. This was late '93. We were just a job shop working for aerospace companies, providing electroplating to repair parts, and went down to 3 employees, counting myself. My boss said, "Close it or sell it. I'm done with this." I couldn't find anybody to buy it, so I went back and said, "Look, let me assume the debt." It was roughly in total about $600,000. And I said, "I want to go a different direction that you don't believe in." And of course, he agreed to that. Who wouldn't? Mm-hmm. And we quickly grew from 3 employees to around 500 when I sold it last year. And we had 2,000 customers in 60 countries around the world. I traveled to most of those places, setting up the business early on. And as the business sort of evolved, we started out working incredibly hard. And then in everybody's passion for getting the end result, sometimes they would forget to be respectful. And then all of a sudden, culture is important here. This is something we need to focus on. So we came up with a definition of culture that I basically just said, look at this. Culture is what we agree to do and how things get done. And what we agree to do is our mission statement in a very clear and compelling way. In our mission, we wanted to tell customers why they should do business with us and tell every employee at the same time why they have a job. Mm-hmm. Because if this is the value we're creating for our customers, if we don't do it well, our jobs are in jeopardy. And then how things get done distilled out into behaviors and leadership traits. And most organizations, when they put this stuff together, I really feel it kind of falls into the camp of look good, feel good, sound good, and not things that can actually practically improve the organization. And so, I said back then, and this is probably 17, 18 years ago now, as I was building this aerospace company, what are we really trying to accomplish? If the only reason we get work is because our customers see us as a better value alternative than the competition, then we need to be better than the competition. So what if we created a scenario where at any point in time, at least 50% of our employees are behaving, performing, and leading as good or better than the top 10% at our strongest, most admired competitors? And, the leadership team at the time just about fell out of their chair and said, yeah, that would give us an amazing advantage. Mm-hmm. So I surveyed all 70 employees back then, and I said, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish from your view. What are the behaviors, the observable behaviors of the best performing folks you've ever worked with on their best days? And we had 68 of our employees participate in the survey. Huge list of behaviors came in with a lot of commonality that distilled down to the 6 behaviors that stood the test of time, and then our leadership traits distilled out of that. And then sort of fast forward as we're growing the business, I think we've made virtually every mistake that you could make. But from a strategic standpoint, right. we would develop something, get a whopping 0.25% market share penetration, develop something else. And before we knew it, we had 10,000 repairs for aircraft parts. And I said, wait a minute, let's focus on going deep on a few of those. And so kind of a long answer to your question, but we evolved all the way through, the work ethic, the culture, the strategy, And the thing that was really cool about that is it formed all of these really practical things or ways of approaching these subjects that 80% of the employees understood, not just the top 5%.
Right.
And it allowed us, I would say, for the 15 years prior to selling the company to Textron in early 16, we never had a year where we hit all of our business goals, not even one, but we never had a year where we didn't beat the competition significantly and way outpace the market. So it just worked, and that's kind of the evolution that developed these things.
That's fascinating. I teach for Embry-Riddle, and the aerospace industry is really interesting. I was looking at some of your background here, and I mentioned that Jack Welch, but in 2011, Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, and voted CEO of the century, reviewed your management system and said that that's the best business management system I've ever seen. Now that's quite an endorsement, and I'm curious when you're talking about behaviors and leadership traits. Did you say there were 6 behaviors? Can you tell me?
Sure. At the aerospace company, what distilled out of it. So prior to making this change, we had a set of values, and the top value was integrity.
Okay.
And I remember asking 10 employees, how are you applying integrity to make us measurably better? And I got 10 crazy answers that told me all I've really done is created expensive wallpaper around the facility. And so what is the observable part of integrity? So we just shifted over and said, look, high performing employees throughout Able do what they say they will. So that's the distilled out portion of integrity. And then the others, present and pursue permanent solutions as opposed to dwelling on problems. Treat company resources as their own. Are respectful, honest, and straightforward. Are fully engaged and participate within the team. Now these behaviors and the leadership traits, I could care less if an employee could recite them.
Right.
What I cared about is that they knew how to live it to measurably improve the organization, which in turn improved their position within the organization, the value they created, and the amount of money that they can make, for example. And so how I got around this, rather than saying, hey, you need to memorize this stuff, which again I could care less about. I ask the employees once or twice a year for each one of our alignment tools, the vision, the mission, the 6 behaviors, to come up with one example of how you're living it in a way that measurably made the organization better. And there would be some calculation of a return on investment. So the ROI would be in only 2 categories, and it's very granular in terms of what you can do with it. But the 2 categories, and they have to be in balance, is customer experience improvements and profitability improvements. And so I had close to 500 employees. It didn't matter what their role was, coming up with amazing examples. I remember one in 2012 where this woman that was masking parts that go into electroplating tanks came up with an idea to rack parts differently that saved, in this material, roughly $4,200 a year. Today, it's probably $10,000 a year in savings. So from every part of the organization, we had this type of stuff coming in, and it just brought the alignment tools to life.
Well, it's just fascinating that you found ways for them to give examples. I mean, before you even mentioned what you said later, I was going to ask you how you measured being fully engaged in some of these things, but you're having them give you examples. Do these, now, what you've learned, how does that translate from industry to industry? Is it pretty similar of what people need to know?
A couple of things around that. The single biggest deficit, I believe, in the entire world is capable leadership. And with capable leadership, the most value added thing that we can do is create better alignment within the organization. I've never met one organization where the senior leadership team says, yep, we're all on the same page. I've never seen it. And I've been able to walk a number of organizations through the process I developed at Able, and they, for the first time, have alignment. They say they haven't had these conversations before. So it really doesn't matter whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, public, private, government. It doesn't matter. Alignment helps any organization out there. So it completely transfers. And the way we thought about each alignment tool, because we're getting people to change behaviors, is there's 3 dimensions. And if the only reason we're doing anything in the organization is to make it measurably better, alignment tools need to pass the test. So there were, in the 3 categories, we would say application of it. So how often do you appropriately live this particular alignment tool? Second category would be your results. We're only doing these alignment tools or asking you to live them to get better results. So are you, hitting within a reasonable range? What we ask you to do, are you significantly below it? Are you above it? That would affect the score. And if they were not living the alignment tool to a point where it was negatively affecting the team, it would take away as well. And then the last category was the ability to communicate and influence. So when you talk about it, are you just reciting it? You have no idea what it means. Can you stump speech around it? Are you influencing others to live it? And so it was, the first time through, it took a little bit of time, but it just flew in terms of the ease of being able to assess employees. And it was a really level way of assessment across the entire organization. I was quite surprised in a very pleasant way how well that scoring criteria actually worked.
Well, it's interesting to me that you said they haven't had these conversations before. Why do you think that they haven't?
The alignment conversations,
right.
I believe it's just a process. So when you talk about getting everybody on the same page from a strategic standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, it's just lack of a process and sort of a set of rules to go through. For example, we worked with one large company. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought it was really interesting. Our job was to come in and help them nail down their alignment tools: mission, vision, behaviors, and leadership traits. They had been working on it for a couple of years. They had thousands of employees around the world. We surveyed all the employees the same way I did our employees back when I had 70, got all this data back in, talked to the leadership team around the value they're supposed to create for their customers, around creating the mission and the vision. And in less than 2 hours, people Skyped in from all over the world. We had complete agreement.
Oh, I lost
mission
you.
and
Wait
the
a
vision.
minute. Lee, say that again. You had complete agreement, and then you cut out for a second.
Oh, yeah. Within 2 hours, actually less than 2 hours, we had complete agreement from the entire leadership team on what the behaviors, the leadership traits, the mission, and the vision were going to be. And the CEO looked at me and said, "This is incredible, and I just can't even believe it worked this well." And when he thought about it, he reached out to me later and said, we build equipment and we have blueprints for building this equipment that we sell to our customers around the world. You give it to the team, you build it to plan, and out it comes. He said, we gave them a process for doing it that they'd never thought of before. And that's why it works so well. And all these alignment tools have stood the test of time. So I think that's really more the issue. There's not a concise process that they walk through to make that happen on the culture side as well as the strategy side.
When you say it withstood the test of time, but I'm curious how much time it takes for them to see, impressive results. I mean, is it something that it happens quickly? Do you have feedback on that?
It's something that happens quickly. We have lots of testimonials on our website where just getting better alignment, and so here's why it works. Okay. The more aligned employees are, team members within the organization, only then can they have the better conversations we want them to have. And then out of that, they distill better actions, and it always yields better results. We had one example in a chemical distribution company where the CEO called me early 2014 and said, Jack Welch tells me you have this great process for getting better alignment results. I'd like you to work with this part of organization that's the worst performing part of the organization. I said, great. So we started the process late February in 2014. I got a call from the CEO in December, and he said, congratulations. They went from the worst performing part of our entire organization of about 10,000 employees to by far the best performing part of the organization. So even getting 10 or 15 or 20% more aligned just causes significantly improved results.
I'm interested in what you think of Jack Welch's, removing 10% of employees theories of. Do you think that that's a good practice?
Well, I think you have a real challenge when you have 400,000 employees to get leaders not to protect poor performance, and they develop relationships with employees and everything else that. Mm-hmm. The kids play together, go to church together and all that, and they just feel too bad letting them go. And so I believe, this is my view, that if you force it in most organizations, it's probably you probably should have at least a 15, 16% turnover. to continually upgrade the talent and help those that it's just not the right fit for them find another organization to work in where it really is. The thing that he liked about our system is it allowed you to see this stuff so you could move faster and on making the change. And when we first put this methodology in place at the aerospace company that I built, it was pretty incredible. I was approached by the engineering manager, and he said, "Hey, I've got this individual I need to let go." And I asked my typical questions. Well, did this person know what was expected and where he stood? And engineering manager said, "Absolutely. This gentleman knows all of that stuff." Said, "Well, we're going to roll out this more robust version of alignment to strategy and culture. So let's try it on him for 60 days and see what happens." At the end of 60 days, he moved into a very solid middle performer and stayed there for a couple more years. And so the clearer we are around what's expected and where an employee stands or a team member within the organization, what I found is for every 10 I used to have to let go, I could course correct early and save at least 6 of those into solid middle performers. So the conditions that Jack Welch wanted to create for employees, they all knew where they stood. They knew what winning and losing looked like. They knew exactly what was expected. Whatever outcomes in terms of goals that they were required to achieve, they were fully connected all the way up to the top goals or strategy of the organization, and that they fit the culture, because how you make the numbers is incredibly important. So I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have tremendous respect for Jack, as a person, what he accomplished in business, as well as his ideology around this stuff. I've never been more aligned with another leader, and I think he was attacked maybe in a few ways in a completely misunderstood way. So this 20-70-10, conceptually, it's probably closer to 20-65-15. And since protecting poor performance is a huge leadership problem in most businesses, he was just forcing them to do it. And so that's my view.
How did you get on his radar to begin with?
Gosh, I'm thinking 8 or 9 years ago, I attended a workshop that he was facilitating for a couple of days, and they limited it to 100 people in the room, and most of them managing over $1 billion in business. And I was coming off a $10 million year, so we quickly grew way past that after that point. But the first exercise in the room on day one was somebody from each table state their mission and supporting values. And I'm sitting at a table with a multi-billion-dollar bank, giant construction company, and nobody knew their stuff. And I said, well, it's in my bones. I'd be happy to go. And I said, well, here's our mission. This is why we created it. Here's our behaviors to support it. We threw values out. There was this really long, uncomfortable silence. And I thought, well, gosh, maybe I don't belong in this room. I should leave. And then Jack said, that's perfect. I wouldn't change anything. And as he went around the room, I understood why he paused, because everybody else just fell in the camp of look good, sound good, feel good. It's like they hired a values committee to put this together, and they weren't developed by the people running the business. And so we go to lunch, and on day one, I sit down. I didn't get selected to be at his table, and I look over. He plumps down sort of next to me and says, I've done this 1,000 times. Nobody's ever gotten it right till you. How the hell did you do it? And we started our relationship then, and he was very instrumental in sort of helping me develop our methodologies and even the tool over time to be able to sustain and scale executing on strategy and having an intentional culture, because I think that's really where it falls down. It's easy to describe what you want. And I think most senior leaders spend 80% plus of their brain power working on that, and less than 20% on how they're actually going to do it. And so being able to sustain and scale and iterate faster and smarter in the competition around strategy as well as intentional culture is the piece that I really spent a lot of time figuring out, and I believe we've solved the problem.
Well, it's fascinating what you do, and I've worked in companies where the CEO just didn't realize that their culture was a problem. How do we get the ones that need to buy into this to discover that they need this?
Well, I believe any organization where leadership is intensely working on improving, creating more value so they can profitably grow. We're just looking at, for-profit organizations, and they're applying math, common sense, and logic. They're going to realize that they need it. And these organizations are going to just know that their single biggest challenge and biggest opportunity is alignment, flat out. and how you make the numbers is incredibly important. I would show a scatter graph, and on the vertical axis we would measure everybody objectively on culture, on the horizontal on performance, and we wanted everybody as close to the upper right hand corner as possible. But there was a pretty big spread from the upper right down to the lower left. Very few would ever be in the upper left-hand corner, because you can't score high on culture if you get your alignment tools right if you're low on performance.
Right.
And so my rule was anybody that was in the lower right-hand corner, i.e. high performance but really low culture, and generally they just appear one day because you missed them through the interview process in your filters. My goal personally was to get them out of the building in less than 10 minutes. And then I would do a metaphorical public hanging of these people to say, we don't stand for this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would further tell the employees, and I was never kidding about this, if you can get them a job at our strongest competitors, I'll give you a bonus. And if you can get them a senior leadership position, I'll give you a parking space and a company car, because they'll be so much easier to compete against with these people going over there and sort of sucking the life force out of our competition. So we were serious about it.
Wow. Well, it's very fascinating. I mean, all of your work interests me. I've worked with people who've worked with Jack. I had Steve Kerr was on my show, who's worked a lot with Jack, and I'm looking at some of the other things you do. I mean, your company, Execute to Win, is based here in Phoenix, but you also do other work with. Did I see you work with younger high school and college students to help them with entrepreneurship and leadership? What do you do in that respect?
I do. The philanthropic efforts that are most important to me are about building the engine that runs the world. And in a very, sort of win-win selfish way, the more competition there is, the more businesses there are, the quality goes up for the products and services that I and my family, consume. The prices go down, there's more jobs, wages go up, all of it. So I'm trying to work on the foundation, and I'm really interested in what Youth Entrepreneurs is doing. My goal is to get to all 18 schools where this program is in place in Arizona over the next couple of months. And we're teaching seniors. It's an entire year program about entrepreneurship, and all the way through they develop into, creating a business plan. There's a competition, somebody wins. And I think particularly I've got a great message for them, because today government and formal education, educational institutions, they're telling everybody it's not their fault they're not making it. And I was kicked out of the house in high school. I was given debt that wasn't mine, that I had to pay off. I mean, really started from what you would consider to be a disadvantaged position, and oh my gosh, nobody could make it from there. And yet I'm telling them you can start anywhere and go everywhere. So I'm helping those kids move in that direction. And the single biggest piece of feedback I'm getting so far is that we actually believe we can do it now, whereas before they didn't. And then I'm working with Mort Flesher, ASU, in this program called Flesher Scholars, and it's all about the first child from each family to be able to go to college. And our goal is to have them graduate debt-free, because we help with the scholarships as well. And then I'm also just starting to get involved with, and I'm very interested in something called Year Up in the Phoenix area, where young adults. Yeah, fantastic program. So this is where I want to spend my time. I think it makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, Gerald's program's amazing. That Year Up's a great thing, and what I'd like is that they're focusing on soft skills, and I don't think we see enough of that with that age group. You know what I mean? We just need to get so much more into that. You agree?
I completely agree. I also think that Gerald is mining in a diamond mine where nobody's mined before.
Right.
And we're telling everybody, if you don't have a college degree, you're not going to go anywhere. That's absolutely not true. And so I see these young adults as being hungrier with better perspective and traits than most folks that I ever got out of the universities. I mean, I think there's a reason why when people go into college and they leave, when they assess the critical thinking ability, there's no change. The whole purpose of education, at least in my view, is to set people up to be wildly successful in life, personally and professionally. And the goal is not the degree, and we have to get away from that. And we have to be communicating to people that you can start anywhere and go everywhere. And So that's why I'm involved with these 3 different programs and a number of other things to move in that direction.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure everybody's going to want to know more about what you do. Can you share your website or your company information, how people can reach you?
Sure. The website for Execute to Win is etw.com, and you can reach out to me through the website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find there, and happy to answer all your questions.
Well, this has been so fascinating. Thank you so much, Lee. I really enjoyed talking to you. There's a lot about this education. You and I will have to talk off there because I'm fascinated in what you're doing locally. So thank you for being here.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.